60% of the time, it works every time.
Does thinking you're the last sane man on the face of the earth make you crazy?
You wanna hold her?
Yes.
Please her?
Yes.
Then you got to try a little tenderness.
It's the Al Travis Show, and one of our guests that we love having on every week. He is American Experiment's John Hinderaker, president of the club. Sir, how are you today?
I'm doing fine, thanks.
I find just the news story today in Minnesota is so interesting to me. I don't know how you trip into being as rich as, let's say, the Pohlads. So I don't think you trip into it. So you must have something going for you to figure out how to bob and weave and have a team worth $1.5 billion. And I sit there thinking to myself, I can't see it. News story today, the Twins were for sale for 10 months. No one's buying them. $1.5 billion was the asking price. And then 2 Thursdays ago, they just hacked half the team. You're gone. Get out of here. We're done. We're lowering our payroll. And yesterday, Pohlads come out and say, nah, we're going to keep the team. We changed our mind. How do you get to one point? How do you make that kind of money if you decimate your team one day and the next day, like, you know what? Maybe we want it. You can't just change your mind on stuff like that, can you?
Well, first of all, the people who now own the Twins are not the ones who made the money. It was Carl Pohlad, their father, who made the money.
Well,
right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I don't know these guys, and I can't really comment on them. But just to be clear, Carl is gone. So I don't know how long you've been around Minnesota, Al, how old you are. I'm old enough to remember this whole history, right? I actually remember when the Twins moved here from Washington, D.C. The Washington Senator was owned by the Griffith family,
Yep.
Calvin Griffith. And the people in Washington were outraged because they moved here in 1961, just when the team was getting good. After 50 years of misery, just when they're getting good, they moved to Minnesota. And in 1965, that team was in the World Series. That was one of the great hitting teams in the history of baseball. And for a while, the Twins were great. They were good, and they were a real asset to the community. But the Griffiths didn't have any money. Calvin was like the last baseball owner who wasn't rich, and it made things very difficult. So in the late 70s and the early 80s, it got bad. The Twins got bad, crowds dwindled. Metropolitan Stadium, really needed to be released. The Metro to be, they needed a new stadium. They finally got a new stadium, the Metrodome, and along the way they started developing some really, really good players. And so they win the only championships in Minnesota history in 1987 and 1991. They win the World Series, and those were great times to be a sports fan in Minnesota. And somewhere in there, I don't remember what year it was, but somewhere in there, Carl Pohlad bought the Twins, and it seemed like
1984.
Yeah, 84, right. And so Calvin kind of went out in a blaze of glory, with really good 84. Oh, I'm sorry. He bought him in 84. So he bought him in time to benefit from the young player development that actually was already going on. These players were there, at least in the minors by 1984. And so the Twins fans thought our problems are solved. We have a rich owner like everybody else. We can spend money. Well, and the Twins have been a pretty good team in the last, I don't say 15 or 20 years. They made the postseason a number of times. They had a 17-game postseason losing streak, which defines all known laws of probability, but they broke that. But they didn't quite get over the hump. This year there were times when they looked really good. They had a 13-game winning streak, but then they kind of fell apart. They weren't playing well for most of the year. And the owners obviously decided that this team isn't really going anywhere. This team peaked probably a couple of years ago, and now they've got a substantial payroll and not that much of a future. So at the trading deadline a couple of weeks ago, they trade a lot of the players whose names we know. And whether that's a good idea or a bad idea depends on what they got for them. If you trade away an established major leaguer and you get a couple of prospects in return, well, the question is, who are the prospects? And you don't know for another 5 or 6 years, whether that turns out to be a good deal or a bad deal, very often. So So that's where we sit. And it's very weird. In recent times, one of the best investments anybody could possibly make has been buying a sports franchise.
Or,
And the reason for that, I take it, is there aren't very many of them. It's kind of like people used to say about real estate. They're not making any more of it.
yeah, there's not, and that is absolutely true. And this story today is that the Celtics, the Boston Celtics, again back to franchises, got sold for almost $7 billion.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
wow.
in today's market, 1.5 billion is not a lot of money to pay for a sports franchise. And I'm not privy to any information about who might be interested and what offers might have been made, what negotiations might have been held. I would be shocked, frankly, if you couldn't get $1.5 billion for the Minnesota Twins. But here we are, and in a way, it's reminiscent of the bad old days when,
Yeah.
when we had ownership that didn't have any money, and the team started going downhill.
Well, you can have money if you don't spend it on the team. That's where you see the problems. But okay, I'll talk sports with a sports guy. Let me ask you this: what Donald Trump is doing in D.C. comes up, shows all the graphs and the crime and the thing and the bobber, and this isn't working for the people of D.C. I'm coming in. We're going to come in and clean this thing up. As I hear this morning, already 100 arrests. They're going to clean up the streets. There was literally a protest, a march, saying, get off our streets. You stay out of here. It's not even safe to be on those streets. Does he have the right to do it? I presume somebody said,
Sure he does. Sure he does. So the Home Rule Act was passed, I think, in 1973. Under the Constitution, the District of Columbia is federal territory. It is run by the federal government. In 1973, Congress passed the Home Rule Act, which gave at least immediate control over the district, to this district government. They got a mayor and so forth. But there's a section in the Home Rule Act that says that the president can declare an emergency and take over the DC police for up to 30 days. And that's what Trump did. He declared that emergency, and now for 30 days, the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, whoever she designates, is running that Metropolitan Police Department. And Trump did two other things. He called out the DC National Guard, which he certainly can do, and he assigned some federal law enforcement people to be on the streets in Washington, D.C. And so those are all perfectly legal moves, and I think appropriate moves. D.C. has got the fourth highest murder rate of any American city. It's got a lot of homeless people. They panhandle. They do things in the streets that shouldn't be done in the streets.
Yeah.
And I'm totally with Trump on this one. There's no reason the American people can't have a capital that they can be proud of. Here we are, the most powerful country in the world, one of the richest countries in the world, and DC is kind of a war zone. So I think if these measures can help to clean up DC, to reduce the crime rate, to get homeless people off the streets, I think it's great.
Fantastic. Let's go to break. When we come back, we're talking more with John Hinderaker from the American Experiment. Go to AmericanExperiment.org. Take a look around. I want to talk a little bit about, was there voter apathy going on in Minnesota here this week? We'll talk about it.
Think about it. Now that school's out for the summer, how are Minnesota students doing? Not very well. Minnesota ACT scores fell again last year and are the lowest they've been in 10 years. In fact, fewer than half of Minnesota students can either read or do math at grade level. Think about it. We used to brag about our schools. Now we're losing to states like Mississippi. Visit AmericanExperiment.org for more information. Think About It is brought to you by Center of the American Experiment, Minnesota's think tank.
If it's your turn to host a game, Grandpa's Barbecue suggests you try something different. Put out the perfect barbecue flavor of Grandpa's Barbecue. Add it to your ribs, dip the meatballs, or drench your wings in the original flavor of Grandpa's Barbecue. It isn't too hot or spicy, fruity or smoky or whatever. Grandpa's Barbecue. Available in select stores and online at grandpasbarbecueshop.com.
Easily offended? The Al Travis Show is not for you. The Al Travis Show. All sides are welcome.
We've got him, American extremist John Hinderaker. John, they had some primaries on Tuesday for some important seats, a lot of stuff going on, but Melissa Hortman's seat, I would venture to say one of the most known empty seats in the state of Minnesota, in the history of the state of Minnesota. The primary comes out, the man who won, Lee, did not get 1,200 votes. In fact, there were less than 6,000 or 2,000 votes cast in this whole thing. You could have won this with 490 votes, gotten the nomination, which will probably give you Hortman's seat. I presume that's a pretty blue district. People just not caring? How can you, less than 2,000 people, decide who's going to be that next representative?
You know, Al, this is something that we see over and over again. And of course, it's an odd numbered year.
Yep.
And so people are not thinking about politics. Somebody mentioned to me, I got to plead guilty here, Al. I didn't vote in the primary. I'm not sure there were any races that I would have voted in, but somebody last week mentioned to me that it was primary day coming up, and I said, "What? What primary?" Because it's an odd numbered year, and so, for example, one election that's going to be held this year is for mayor of Minneapolis. That would be probably the marquee election, but there's no primary. That's technically nonpartisan. They use ranked choice voting in Minneapolis.
Oh my! We should spend a whole show on that sometime. You can tell me how that works out in America.
I know, it's a disaster. So there's not that many races. But you see this over and over again, the number of people who don't turn out for primaries. And there are times when screwball candidates get nominated and occasionally elected. But I'll give you an example. Down in Alabama, they had an open Senate seat. And I don't remember exactly what was going on there, but they had an open Senate seat. And Judge Roy Moore, am I saying that name correctly? I think it's Roy Moore, won the Republican primary. And he was a terrible candidate, and he wound up losing the general election so that you had a Democratic senator from the state of Alabama who never would have won, in a normal election. But if you went back and you look at the numbers of who voted in that U.S. Senate primary, it was an amazingly small proportion of the population that wound up selecting that Republican candidate. And when you break it down now into like a Minnesota House race, it's almost embarrassing how low those numbers are.
Well, if you can get 500 votes and get the nomination, now you're in. It's just amazing to me. And I like you say, it's an off time, but I presume when we get to the actual election, then Hartman's seat's not going to be. Maybe this Mitchell seat. Is there any seat here you think can be switched? Senator Anderson's seat is pretty red. That's going to stay. I don't believe the Hortman seat moves. Is the Mitchell seat winnable for the Republicans? Which would turn the entire state around.
Yeah, it would. I don't know the answer to that question, Al, for two reasons. Number one, I don't remember exactly where that is, and I don't know what the voting was.
Woodbury.
Yeah, which ought to be purple, but I don't know what the margin was when that seat was last contested in 2022. The other thing I don't know, Al, is are voters going to react at all to Nicole Mitchell turning out to be a burglar? I mean, this is a deep embarrassment to the DFL party, and you'd think that some people would say, gosh, I voted for a Democrat last time, and now she's in prison. Maybe I'll try voting for a Republican. Do people think that way? I don't know.
Well, we'll find out, I guess. All right. A couple of things just real quick off your website, and I got this today, yesterday, I presume, in the mail. A letter thinking, where's my Thinking Minnesota magazine? And you know what I got me thinking, John? Where is my Thinking Minnesota magazine? I hadn't gotten one. What's going on? What's
so when a
skinny?
magazine is quarterly, people aren't standing by the mailbox watching for it, so you don't really notice that you didn't get your quarterly magazine. And so what's happening here, Al, is that Thinking Minnesota for its whole history was free. If you wanted it, give us your mailing address, we'll send it to you. And, printing costs went up, postage went up, the circulation went up to like 80,000. And it got to the point where we just couldn't afford to give it away for free. So now to get Thinking Minnesota, we've gone to a subscription model. You've got to be what we call a sustaining member of American Experiment, which costs $35 a year. if you send in $35 or more, it doesn't matter.
No limits.
More, you're good for the next year of Thinking Minnesota. This issue, Al, that you've got being promoted there on that card you got in the mail is one of my favorites ever. The cover is my favorite cover ever. It's got a loon on a lake with the pine trees in the background, and the loon is wearing a red hat. And the cover says "Make Minnesota Great Again." It's a wonderful cover, and it's a great issue of the magazine.
All right, so all you guys got to do is go to AmericanExperiment.org. I'm just asking, and again, I shouldn't ask questions to a guest I don't know. Will there be an electronic version of that? If I put $35 down, could I get the electronic version of it and not necessarily have it mailed to my home? Is that, the world's going that way.
Yeah, actually, anybody can get the electronic version for free. If you go to AmericanExperiment.org and you click at the top, there's a tab that says magazine. You can get every issue ever produced of Thinking Minnesota. They're right there on the website. You can read it online for free. And we even send content out, links to the feature articles by email too. So the only thing you have to pay to get is the hard copy magazine that's on paper. But people love it. People love the magazine. You can put on your table. You can pick up and carry around, put in your briefcase if you're traveling, and so for that, $35 standing membership.
I love that. That's not a problem. And again, I like it because when you lay it out on the coffee table or whatever, it catches people's eyes. You always have great covers with something that grabs your eye and people go, oh, what is that? Oh, Thinking Minnesota. I get it all the time. One last thing. You do, if I'm not mistaken, again, sometimes I do, you can ask for, when you look for events, you can ask for speakers, right? Your group, you have tons of people that work for you. You can request a speaker?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a place on the website where you can do that. And we do. We have, 10 or so policy fellows. I give speeches. Our communications director, Bill Walsh, gives speeches. If you got a Rotary Club or Kiwanis or whatever it might be, and you need a speaker every week, we can supply speakers on all kinds of topics.
That's what I love that because I get a lot of the guys on the show. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. We're out of time. AmericanExperiment.org. Go take a look around. I appreciate you being here, John. Really do.
Great to be with you, Al.
Think about it. A famous politician once